Welcome back to Mozzy Sails. In the absence of America's Cup racing, where COVID has stopped play until Wednesday, I'm bringing you an interview with an actual America's Cup foil designer. So thanks very much to Doug Schickler for giving up his time to come on the channel and give me a chat through, give his take on some of the pros and the cons of these design challenges, the America's Cup class. Really interesting conversation. Now, it's a bit of a different format to usual for my channel, so what I've done is bookmark the video, timestamps for each chapter, different questions, so if you want to jump about, find the bit that interests you, then go ahead. But if not, it's a Sunday, there's no racing on, grab yourself a coffee and enjoy this geeky boat chat. Welcome to the channel, Doug. Thank you for your time. And can you just tell us a bit about your background in the Cup and design for us, just so we know where you're coming from?
Okay, no problem. So my background in the Cup particularly starts with the 32nd, which is the Cup that was held in Valencia with version 5 boats. We might have overplayed the extensive background because there was a big hiatus between that Cup and this one where I wasn't involved. But in the meantime, I've partnered with Davide Tagliapietra in Italy. He's my business partner, and he has been involved in every Cup cycle between those, with the exception of the deed of gift match with the Trimaran and the big Alinghi 5. So I was on the Plus 39 campaign, which is also where I met Davide for the 32nd Cup. We were based in Ravenna, Italy, at a small design studio there. I had just recently come to Amsterdam and started my business before that. So it was maybe 6-8 months of working for myself before I got swept up into the Cup fever.
Perfect. And just on getting larger boats foiling, you've had some interesting side projects over the years with the is it the gunboat as well? Did you work on that? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm a repeat offender when it comes to presenting at the Foiling Week, for example. And one of the premier projects that we were part of was bringing the Gunboat 40, the G4, onto foils. 3 were built. There was one that Shannon Falcone actually took to Bermuda with Jimmy, called, I don't remember what they called it. They put it all in Red Bull livery, wrapped the whole boat in silver. It was quite a good look. The project was called the F4 for basically a more performing version, a longer hull, bigger rig, some modifications and refinements to the foils as well.
Nice. And when we look at the Luna Rossa boat that's in this Cup, what are we seeing which is your involvement? Are you hydro? Are you structural, mechanical? Where are you feeding into the design?
Specifically, both my partner and I, we both have the role of being involved in foil structures and systems. So that's specifically the structures and the systems associated with the foil. Hydrodynamics is not my specialty, and we have specialists, obviously, in a big team like that. For smaller projects, we get involved, we consult, bring in outside partners. But in this case, the shape of the foil doesn't come from us. The way the flaps operate does, the way the loads are carried through into the arm. And my business partner, Davide, who has been with this team longer, he is also very involved in the structural engineering of the One Design arms.
Yeah, I am really interested in the flap mechanics, and we've had several videos come out on this and on the channel. I think it's interesting to a broader church of people than I expected, really. I think first what I'd like to talk to you about is just how you viewed the class, because it's a big departure from what we had previously, and I know you're involved in the design team, but I know you're America's Cup fan as well. So What were your initial impressions of the class when you saw it announced? And
I'll tell you, first of all, to set the record straight, I wasn't involved in the team at the point that the class was developed. My involvement started later. It started actually with the little boat that we built at Luna Rossa. It gave me an avenue to enter the team parallel to Davide, as I said. So I didn't have much insight into the workings of the rule development at the beginning until later time. So at the beginning of this entire cycle, I was kind of where you are. I mean, a fan looking in from the outside. Maybe I could make a phone call and get a little bit of insight, but not much more than that. I have to say, at the beginning, I was a little bit skeptical. I knew that there had been a lot of work done going into development of the rule and the concept, the layout of the boat. Found out later, a lot of that was through the use of New Zealand Simulator, that many different possible solutions to the problem were raced against each other. And this was the victor at the end of the day. My skepticism with the class came from the fact that I thought it was never going to have the power of a catamaran, just by beam alone. It turns out to be completely backwards. I mean, the boat is, it's got more than enough, and it's proven to be an excellent performer and providing really good racing. That's the best part about it. It's not just a parade out there, and it's not just banging one bounder to the other. There's reasons to stick to part of the race course, reasons to chase puffs, make tactical decisions. Naturally, the upwind start is a big part of that too.
I must say, I'm a convert. I was highly skeptical of it as well. And again, I always viewed a catamaran as the ideal foiling platform because it's so low drag when it's in displacement, getting up to speed, lifting off, and like the instant righty moment gain as that windward hull comes out the water and then gets up onto the foils. Plus, you can mount the foils inboard on it for a bit of safety. So I was pretty skeptical myself, and
Well, look. I'll say this: that like what converted me, or what brought me around to seeing them for what they are, would be okay. They've definitely got the power, and part of that comes from the fact that they're. I mean, obviously the arms, but also the amount of weight involved gives them a lot of power. They lowered the rigs in relative terms compared to the cats. You know, I'm sure you've seen the videos that North Sails did a presentation on the development of this early on. They presented it in New Zealand, and they were talking about the fact that they just didn't need all that rig in the cats. They were over canvassed, if you will. And I think that one of the things that really convinced me that this was a great step forward for the Cup is the aerodynamic package, the efficiency of the sail, mainsail as a double skin mainsail itself, but also the fact that they're end plating to the deck and bringing the boat down to the water. That combination is something that cats don't really offer. And then there's the aerodynamic drag itself. A catamaran with all the cables and wires and king posts and whatnot underneath, that all drags. These are sleek bodies. And the other aspect which I'm pleasantly surprised at is how contained the crew are. I mean, it's really safe. One or three people going across the back of the boat just after or before a maneuver is a manageable situation compared to what would you even call it? If you look back and you watch the way the 72s tacked, there's a whole crew of people going from one side to the other.
we kind of touched on this already, but what I want to ask is, have any of your preconceptions about design or what the solution to the design would be, have they changed? Have they been challenged through this process?
Of course, you always learn. Yeah, like I said, I thought these boats, as I indicated, I thought these would be very dangerous boats. And I think that they're far safer than the 50s at the end of the day. They're also proving to be more robust. You know, everybody talks about the fragility of the boats because they're race boats. They're all prototypes. So there's going to be an odd problem. But I mean, Luna Rossa's had the misfortune of having one mast to fall back. We still use it. Yeah, it's still intact. I think that anybody who looks at the internet pictures and videos that have been shared around in all different media knows the problems that different teams have had with structures. But compare that to, you know, mast snapping just because you hit the third wave in a sequence, which was not uncommon in the version 5s. I don't think they've proven to be fragile or as dangerous as we feared. Those are the preconceived notions that I think I've learned to move beyond.
Yeah. How much is a trade-off between what you expect of the sailing team, what you can provide to the sailing team, and what they can meet in the opposite direction? You know, do sometimes you design things which go beyond what they can handle? Is there an expectation trade-off there in terms of, you know, what you're providing and what they can muster their end?
Probably easier to ask the sailors that than myself. I'm not going to judge them. Let's say, I think that there's a validity to the concept that you design the fastest package and then learn how to sell it afterwards. And in the end, I don't think it will ever get slower in that process. And I think that, you know, if a designer comes out with a concept in the America's Cup class or another class, could be, you know, Open 60 or, you know, multi-hull classes or international 14s. They're going to think it goes faster than the next boat, and the sailor is going to have to struggle with it at first, and in the end, the sailor will probably make it go faster than the designer ever thought in the first place. You know, as a kind of quip, I would make a joke that my job is to bring the boat up to the transom of the one in front, but the sailor's got to get it around. When it comes to the flap control, we've gotten a request for, you know, another degree of angle, or let's give up a degree of positive to get a degree of negative, or something like that, which we then try to meet. So that feedback does come from the sailing team. Primary objective that we were given for wings 3 through 6, or yeah, 3, 4, 5, and 6, was that they need to not break. They need to be, I wouldn't say bomb-proof, but they need to be very much more reliable than our initial wings were. Our initial wings were experimental for the purposes of testing lots of different ideas. And the later ones, it was getting closer and closer to the point that we had to have a race-ready product for the sailors to use.
I think it brings us on to, and what you're saying about the reliability.
Now, can I interrupt you just for a sec? Because I think what it does is you get those first 2 wings. Those were the kind of the designer's wings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like those first 2 wings in this class were created for the purpose of making many frequent changes. And when you do that, there's always going to be little niggly stuff that goes wrong, or, you know, problems. And that may cost you sailing time. But when you get further down the track, you know, wings 3 and 4 are kind of a transition. And I think you see this, I think you see this in all the teams, really. The first ones were kind of first cut, take it out of the box, see what you can do with it, and then you make a lot of mods to that within the rules. The second one, the second pair, if you will, they become kind of your first attempt at a reliable race package. And the idea was, of course, that we'd be racing in Calgary and in the UK in the summer of last year on those wings. And then the last pair of wings becomes a refinement on what you've learned. We see that pattern in New Zealand. We see that pattern in American Magic. We see that pattern in our own wings. And in some ways, I think INEOS took a little bit different path after their 3, what you know.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion of INEOS was that I think I know it'd be interesting to get your opinion on the W foil shape as a concept. They obviously punted pretty hard for that and then came up a bit short and were left then scrabbling to come with something more basic by the time they got to the Christmas regatta, which maybe wasn't functioning, and put themselves on the back foot. Whereas Luna Rossa, your second set, your W3 and 4 seemed pretty good foils. And it doesn't seem to be as step change to the final set from a visual perspective, at least. And I know there's been quite a few refinements on the final set as well, but I think that's kind of an interesting difference in the kind of design arc of the teams, and maybe how measured the different teams have been in their process. How's it felt from the inside? This is my speculation, but you're the...
That's fair. I think that your insights into the development of the later wings of Luna Rossa is accurate. I mean, 5 and 6 are a clear refinement of 3 and 4, to the point at which, in some events you could mount 3 and 5 on opposite sides of the boat and people wouldn't be able to tell the difference at first glance. Section shapes, some mechanism differences. There's a lot of similarity. They differ in how they distribute weight. They differ in the amount of development you can do from the starting point as well. And they differ a little bit in their cavitation limits. The W foil you mentioned from INEOS, to me, is a bit of an extension of what we did on wings 1 and 2. Because that's a long time ago, not that many people focus on that sort of design pathway you got to take. You got to start out somewhere, and you're headed towards something else. And I wonder how much they reacted, if they reacted to our wings 1 and 2, right down to the ability to manipulate the outboard end of the flap independently. Something that we looked at. I don't know if, I wouldn't say we executed it perfectly either. The arguments made for the W foil I've seen are, longer span, which is, not really true. Span is projected area based, so we're stuck in the box just like anything else. Less induced drag, I've seen that argument, maybe. The argument about how they surface pierce is also out there. Wasn't a focus when we did our wings, but it might be a factor for the INEOS guys. And stability. The idea of having dihedral in a particular wing, anhedral, yes, but also a dihedral from aircraft is nothing unusual to consider. And at the end of the day, I think all the boats do have at least the wingtip turned up. No one went right to the corner.
Bruni said that he wouldn't take anything off Britannia. That's a famous. I think that's going to be a famous quote of this this cycle. Is it his reply? Would you take anything from Britannia?
Okay, first off, man. I mean, it was not this kind of cold-hearted dagger to the dagger to the back of INEOS Team UK whatsoever. It's a question asked with a sailor who's got no preparation for that question. They ask him, of your opponent's boat, what would you take? What's he going to say? Seriously, what's he going to say? But dispelling all of that, what would I take away from Rita? Okay, on INEOS, I quite like the efforts they made on the grinding forward, the forward-only grinding setup. I think that they were proven to provide all the oil necessary around the course with 6 rather than 8 people. There's something to be said for that, because that could really open up opportunities in the next cycle if we still have grinders if we have a choice between 6 or 8 grinders. So that would be the number one advancement that I think I would take away from Rita.
That's a good answer, because I just did an interview with Freddie Carr, and one of the things I said about Rita, one of the areas that I think the British Challenge has pushed things forward is on that grinding setup and proving the efficiencies of just the forward grinding. So that's enough talk about INEOS, because they're out and forgotten about now. But it's a cruel world, but it's true. And then looking at your opponents for the Cup, Emirates Team New Zealand, is there anything you like about their setup that that you would trade?
Wait a minute, you left out American Magic completely.
Well, no, that was weeks ago now. I mean, you could tell me, is there anything... Actually, let's give American Magic a spot. Is there anything... What do we appreciate about American Magic?
What I appreciate about American Magic, I think, is their calling card, which was sailing, sailing, sailing. I think that they is the first to the water with their mule, and the first to water with their boat one. I think that was their approach. I think it was their strength. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough at the end, but I think that it's a valid way to work. You know?
Yeah, fingers crossed. Actually, I've been a bit dismissive of them, but I really do hope they come back for another challenge. And I think they were.
I hope we have 2 American teams.
Yeah, true. So we missed out Emirates Team New Zealand. Can I go back to that and ask if there's anything you like about their package, which you're maybe envious of?
Well, to frame it in the question that you did, or was posed to Checo about Rita, what would you take from them if you could? Paraphrasing, of course. If you mean I could take it away from them and they couldn't have it anymore, I would take 3 square meters of sail. No, but in all seriousness, the treatment of the deck, the lowered midsection of the deck with the raised pods, still achieving the bow volume rule the way that they did, the way that the bow volume pushes the way it does to then guide into the aerodynamic package they have on deck, I think is quite well done. I really do. The Kiwis are always smart. They're always fast. And as is usually the case for the Kiwis, you see there's a logical connection, between different design decisions. You can see that the decisions they made on deck make no sense if you don't incorporate it with changes to the sail plan, changes to the rig, changes to the hull. Also, the way that they have their crew positioned outboard drives their hull shape to a degree, but they make the most of it again. And those decisions again reflect into the way they incorporate the hinge point for the one design arm, the way they incorporate their rudder and down to their foils. So there's a line to be followed all the way through their design, which is always present in great racing teams.
I think for me, that's one of the impressive things they've done, and in Bermuda as well, when they find these areas to exploit, they're very, very good at quickly matching up the other parts of the design to get the full game from it. So some really interesting.
I mean, it's become a bit of a controversy, but I don't think controversy. Yeah. I can't really say it the correct way. But the same is true for our own team in with regards to the backstays. The team absolutely views it as an opportunity to develop something innovative for the boat that drives the jib design, drives the main design, drives the the way that the main loads are carried into the deck. Yeah, the relationship between the parts that you discussed in one of your recent videos under our fairing and the backstay is not to be missed. Yeah, they're connected, and so there's more than just one team that finds something. It seems that we won't be able to pursue the backstayless sailing. You win some, you lose some.
One of the things I'm really interested in is when you're based in Cagliari and you've got all your I pronounced that wrong, but when you're based in Italy and you've got all the manufacturing built around that base, and then you move out to Auckland, how much is possible in terms of refining these foils? How much is possible in terms of construction, manufacturing? How much can
we're on the record right now?
yeah. So this is where I want to go, and yeah, how much can be done in New Zealand to improve these foils?
I'll start with I guess one of my ideas around the cup is, I think there's another aspect of the cup that's always been there and maybe people don't recognize so much, and that's that it's a competition of your industrial base. Yeah. That hampers some teams and helps others for sure. Yeah. A team like American Magic with the industry behind boat building, behind automotive manufacture, aircraft manufacture, spacecraft manufacture, the kind of access that they can create, going back to America Cubed. I mean, we saw it then. Sails and boats built in missile factories. That industrial base plays a huge role in what you bring to the race course at the end of the day. If you don't have, huge foundries and machine shops, you may wind up making everything out of carbon fiber because it's what you're good at. So suddenly the hammer always becomes carbon fiber, for every problem. But joking aside, and getting specific to Luna Rossa, the industrial north, Lombardia, played a tremendous role in the manufacture of the boat as a whole. The one design arms anyway, but also the wings. And we used a number of factories. At one point, I believe we had 8 or 9 different numerically controlled milling machines manufacturing parts simultaneously in a number of different companies. So you asked whether or not that can be transplanted to New Zealand. Yeah, it gets complicated. For sure, we've reached out to manufacturers in New Zealand, including the Southern Spars, who made our masts anyway. And we've had parts made there. We've reached out to machine shops and had parts modified there. You have to have a few feet on the ground pretty early in the campaign so that you know what's coming down the road in order to anticipate those problems. But the bulk of the manufacturing of the wings was certainly done in the northern part of Italy. In Cagliari, on an island, we also have built up a cadre of suppliers that we can work with. But they generally were small parts, modifications, quick solutions to pressing problems. Yeah.
So, I mean, going back, one of the key parts of the rule is this modification by weight. How much does that play into your material selection in terms of choosing materials which can be easily modified within this rule? How does that change how you construct a foil, bearing in mind the more you can play with it, the more you can tinker with it, the more design iterations you get?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the design versus build iterations is another topic, because We have many more iterations in design than we ever built, of course. And many of the ideas that we pursued go right into that 80-20 problem. I don't think it'd be a surprise to anybody that in the first wing, for example, we used flaps that we could were relatively lightweight and a big, let's say we used lightweight materials so that a portion of that could be modified quickly. There were laminated parts that we could modify quickly. And in order to go through, 3 sets, 4 sets, 5 sets, I can't really be more specific of flap shapes without ever using another of the 20 cards. And that's true across a lot of different parts.
And I think another question which you may or may not want to answer is one of the striking differences for me in the foils is how INEOS and American Magic moved to this top hinge and a streamlined, smooth top surface of the foil, which is a stark contrast to Luna Rossa, where you can see the different materials on top of the foil. How have you managed to get away with having that visible join and not a smooth surface, or visibly smooth surface, continuous surface?
So before I started, I think it was 21 months ago, I started with Luna Rossa. And before I started, there had already been done research on this possibility of using the flexible top hinge or top surface hinge. It's specifically called out in the rule, and I think that brought everyone's attention. It's called out because it's present in the MOF. The loads involved, however, created problems in the in initial models you do with it. Essentially, if you make that thin so it's easily flexible, then it's got to carry quite a large lateral load as well, and it becomes S-shaped. So then you have to introduce another component inside to prevent that S shape from forming. You need to perform a tensile member kind of at an angle, a 90-degree angle to the top surface. And that starts to eat up volume. Yeah, that starts to create a mechanism which is increasingly complicated as you get out towards the tip, especially. Yeah, because these things, if you just keep the tip chords and the root chords relatively similar, it could be done without too great a difficulty. But as you really taper down, and I don't really know how INEOS did it, to be entirely honest, when you really taper down, that mechanism becomes increasingly difficult to fit into the section. And it takes up space, as we talked about. So while we were looking at that problem, it's one of the problems I reopened when I started with the campaign. I reopened the topic of flexible hinge, and did some research and studies on simulation studies on how that could work differently or better, how we could manufacture it, how it could be repeatable and reliable. And we got to talking to the hydrodynamicists about what the advantages of that surface are. And it became clear that if we couldn't control the shape of the surface, it wasn't that helpful to be smooth. Or, if it had any S curve at all, it was the same as a regular hinge, a gap. And they identified the fact that what we really want to do is to reduce that gap as much as possible, and the top surface discrepancies as much as possible. And so we looked at that, and I think you can see in our resulting wings the efforts that we've gone to achieve a very smooth top surface that is can be maintained by the shore crew, and essentially tries to give as much of that same smooth, perfect top surface as possible while still being simplistic with essentially a conventional hinge.
I am, my channel is known, and I'm known for doing this kind of sleuthing around the images we can see, which are grainy, YouTube, ripped from the internet, awful stuff, and we're trying to make these conclusions from. I would be absolutely in my element if I could have a flick through some of the espionage photos that you get a handle on. I mean, just some of the concepts I've talked about on my channel. How far in advance do you know about what the other teams are doing, and how much are you kind of deciphering from through these long lenses of the spies?
So you say in advance, no efforts are made to go into the factory or to pick off from their screens, through the windows or through the side of the chase boat. Although, it's theoretically possible. I know that we point all of our screens inward for a reason. I mean, on the chase boat, but no effort is made to try and pick up what they're doing in anything that they don't publicize themselves or on the boat itself. One of the most telling things that you get in the recon are damages, because then you realize the trouble they're having.
So thanks very much to Doug and especially Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli for allowing him time to down tools and chat to me for a little while. So that's hugely appreciated. It's great to bring to you, well, and me, to be honest, just learn a bit more about the technical details from someone actually involved in the design process. So yeah, fascinating insights. I hope you found these couple of interviews done this weekend interesting. I know it's a bit of a break from the norm, but we'll be back to racing on Wednesday, so normal service will be resumed. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and take care.